Kennedy has also run into resistance from Democrats in his efforts to take on and debate President Joe Biden, who Democrat committee leaders say will be their 2024 candidate with no debating, despite competition from Kennedy as well as Marianne Williamson. In a recent Fox News poll, President Biden has less than two-thirds support in his party's primary, while Kennedy has been building momentum in the bid for this nomination. In a new poll from Quinnipiac University, Kennedy's favorability rating among Republicans and independents is much higher compared to his rank within his own party.
Will the former president do any debates, you think, even if he becomes a nominee? Do you think he'll go toe-to-toe with President Biden?
Well, I'll tell you right now, once we finish this up, and I believe Donald Trump's going to be the nominee, will he debate Joe Biden? Absolutely. No doubt about that. I think the question is, will Joe Biden debate or will he hide in his basement? I think with respect to the other primary challengers, at some point, I fully anticipate that the president is going to debate. But let's be very clear. His lead is so massive. It was really important for these other candidates to demonstrate that they could even really get on his level. And so I think at some point the president will debate. But right now, he decided it's not really important right now. And I think you could have saw that from the other night.
Will you challenge him to regular debates, regardless of the concern about the moderators? I know that's always annoying, but I'll be happy to moderate one, by the way. Would you challenge him? Come on, Joe, you can do it. Will you challenge him to a debate regularly on focused specific topics? In other words, so it's not a wide-ranging, just one debate on foreign policy.
Well, I'll do it right now on your show. I'll challenge him right now, and we can do you can do anybody you want. I'll take anybody from CNN, which is doing very poorly in the ratings, by the way, as you probably know. I'll take anybody, because I think you have an obligation in this case. You really have an obligation to debate. When it came to the Republicans, I was up by 40, 50, 60 points, like being up on her. I think a poll just came out. I'm at 91 and she's at 7. And would you debate? You want to be smart. You don't have to waste your time doing certain
But that would be
debates.
instructive to see you versus Biden on any given topic.
Regardless of poll numbers. I'm way up on him now in the polls. And frankly, I think we have an obligation. When you have the final Republican, the final Democrat, you have the two people you have to debate regardless of polls.
How many debates would you commit to?
As many as necessary. I would like to do it starting now. I don't think he's going to debate, though. I really don't think so. I mean, we had a debate where at the end of the debate, he admitted I was right about almost everything, but in particular on energy. Do you remember I said, I feel like Perry Mason, the way you just collapsed? And he admitted everything about energy, and that's what actually happened, and that's why your energy costs went up 3 and 4 times. I mean, we had $1.87, and he was up to $5, $6, $7, and that's going to happen immediately after the election. Let's not even talk about if he wins. We can't allow it to win. We're not going to have a country left. But that's going to be, you will have energy costs, and this whole concept of all electric, everybody having an electric vehicle, they don't go far. People don't want that. They want everything. They may want electric, but they also want other choices.
If he would have gone to the beach, he's got a consultant somewhere. This is the worst consultant in politics that thinks he looks good in a bathing suit, right? No, he spends so much time at the beach. How do you do that? And, I have a much better body than him. But I'm not really sure that I want to expose it with the sun blaring down, the sand, the surf, the wind, it's not a pretty sight. And they make those chairs, they're actually miracles. They weigh like 3 ounces. They're meant for a child to carry. A child or a very old person to carry. Very, very old. I mean, like really old. And they weigh like, ounces, right? He can't lift it. Remember when he said, I'd like to take him to the back of the barn. And I'd show him, I think I could go like this. And he'd go down. No, I think so. I hit a long ball. I hit a long ball in golf. I'm good golfer, all that stuff. This guy, I could hit a drive. It would take him 4 shots to catch up to where my drive is. But he used to talk about how he wants to take me to the back. And no, the press never criticized him for that. If I said that about him, they'd say, how violent. He's bringing violence into the equation. No, these are sick people.
Do you feel that he's up to debate?
I'm not going to. I don't think it's good for the American people, and I don't think it's good for the Democratic Party if the only people that he has to talk to win this election are his donors and the head of the DNC. I think he needs to. The president should be out talking to the American people. Americans are hurting like they've never been before. It's important for our political leadership to have a dialogue and have engagement with not just me, but with the public.
Democrats are not happy with the work that President Biden is doing. So it should be a red flag to everyone watching to see how hard the DNC is trying to make sure that he is not held to account for his record. Simone Sanders was on Morning Joe the other day saying there will be no primary debate. There will be no stage for Bobby Kennedy or anyone else because the DNC will not allow it. It is all about Joe Biden. And I think it just reveals their hand. They are deathly afraid of Bobby Kennedy. They will do all that they can to pretend like he doesn't exist. And if he continues to build momentum, they're going to do everything they can to try to destroy his candidacy because they don't want voters to have an actual choice. They don't want to have a conversation where our president, his record will be examined and criticized. Do you think that strategy would work?
I don't know if it'll work, but I'll tell you, he's incredibly vulnerable. I mean, we just reached day 853 of the Biden presidency. According to the 538 average, at this point in the presidency, he is the least popular president in the history of polling, with the exception of Jimmy Carter, which is kind of appropriate because he's the worst president since Jimmy Carter. He's 80 years old. He would be 86 if he won a second term. According to the Social Security Administration, and women live longer, but an average American man has a 60% chance of reaching the age of 85. So that means about a 40% chance that Kamala Harris would be president in some point in a second Biden term. So she's on the ballot, and she's even less popular than he is.
You made a comment after days are running Wednesday's presidential debate on the GOP side that the candidates are out of sync with the public. And I think you referenced Oliver Anthony's song, Richmond, North of Richmond. And the reason why I think Trump and what's going on with him is related to that and related to you, as you just pointed out, is like the establishment seems like there's a large segment of the American population that they don't want to have a voice for. And Trump, whether we like it or not, speaks for a large segment of people. I think you speak for a large segment of people. And I'm looking at corporate media, and as you just walked us through, the Biden administration trying to silence you. And I see this just as an overall, whether you're a Democrat, whether you're a Republican, whether you're a liberal, whether you're a conservative, whether you're a believer or whether you're secularist, the establishment seems to not want some of us represented, our voices and our concerns represented on the political stage. And so I just see a connection between what's going on with you and the political, what I believe, persecution of Trump.
Yeah, and I think that is true. I mean, one of the things that Oliver Anthony, talks about elsewhere is he really frames this as a class war, and sees the culture war as an orchestrated, where a class war where both black and whites among the working poor are being systematically stripped mined of their wealth by what he calls Richmond, North of Richmond. In other words, inside the Beltway is a collusion between corrupt corporate entities and billionaires and the Congress. It essentially functions as indentured servants to the big corporations, and that Anthony has talked about how we've got to put aside the culture war, because it's an orchestrated dispute that keeps blacks and whites fighting each other at that level. And then it's a distraction from the real culprits of this, which is BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, these huge corporations that now own 88% of the S&P 500, and they're now trying to buy every single-family home in America. So, I have 7 kids, all in the age when they should be moving out of the home, off my payroll. and moving into their own homes. And I don't know any of their friends. These are kids that are essentially below 30, between 20 and 30. I don't know a single one of their friends who owns a home. And you're seeing more and more of these kids who are living with their parents for extended periods of time. And home ownership, which was the central promise of the American dream. The American dream was if you worked hard, if you played by the rules, you could pay a mortgage, you could get your own home, you could have a summer vacation, you could, take care of your family, and then you'd have money left over for retirement on one job. That was the dream, and that was the actual reality for people who are my age. But for my kids' age, that is just a fantasy. That's not going to happen. The price of single-family homes in the last 2 years has gone from $200,000 to $215,000 2 years ago to $400,000 a day, and the interest rates have gone from 1% to 7%. So that home is now cost 10 times what it did 2 years ago. And even 2 years ago, it was out of reach for a lot of these kids. And why is that happening? One is the inflation from all of the wars, the lost wars that we financed over the past 20 years. $8 trillion that we printed, $16 trillion we printed to fund the pandemic lockdowns. So that's $24 trillion that is fueling this runaway inflation that is driving up the cost of food, healthcare, childcare, housing. But the real culprit are these giant companies, BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, which all own each other. So it's really one giant corporation. And now they've targeted all the single-family homes in America that they want to buy. And if they stay on the current trajectory, they will own 60% of the single-family homes by 2030. Almost everybody I know has a story of a friend or their own story of going to buy a home, about to make an offer on it, or maybe they made an offer on it, and then somebody swoops in with a cash offer and takes it off the table, steals it out from under them. And when you look at who that is, it's usually an LLC with some ambiguous name. But if you trace it to actually who owns it, it's BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. So these companies are strip mining the equity from the American middle class and taking, our land base. They're buying up the farms in this country. Today, the wages, the average wage for an American is $5,000 less than the cost of basic human needs of food, transportation, and housing. So that means that more than half the country has to make up that $5,000 deficit. And the way they're doing it is they're putting it on their credit cards. And so credit card debt has gone up. Now, this week, it hit $1 trillion. That's the highest by far in history. It went up $330 billion in the last 3 years alone. And those families are paying 22% on that debt. If the mafia did that, it would be called loan sharking. But for these banks and credit card companies, it's just business as usual. And who owns virtually all of those banks and credit card companies? BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. We're now putting $113 billion into the Ukraine war. Biden is asking for another $24 billion this week. The entire budget of CDC is $12 billion. The entire budget of EPA is $12 billion. So that's all we got for the environment, $12 billion. But we have $150 billion that we're sending over to Ukraine. Well, Mitch McConnell, when he was asked, can we afford that? He said, well, it's not actually going to Ukraine. It's actually going to U.S. military contractors, Raytheon, General Dynamics, Boeing, and Lockheed. So it's just he admitted it's just a money laundering scheme. And who owns every one of those companies? BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. And what we learned in the last couple of weeks, that one of the ways, when we're loaning this money to Ukraine, it's a loan. and they got to pay it back. So part of their deal was that we clamped down these austerity programs on them that are, just paid for by the poor. One part of that is a land market. So we're forcing Ukrainian farmers to sell all of their farmland. They have the best farmland. They're the breadbasket of Europe. And 28% of that farmland, since the war started, has now been purchased by giant corporations. And who are those corporations? BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. So the whole thing is rigged to strip mine wealth from the American public. And these Republicans who are, who were debating this week, they're like 40 years behind. They're they have all these platitudes from the Reagan administration. We're going to be tough on crime, tough on China, tough on Russia, tough on women who want bodily autonomy, tough on the environment. We're going to plow down Appalachia to get at the coal. And it's all, kind of these shibboleths and platitudes. And nobody can do anything about those things, in a lot of ways. But none of them talked about what's happening to Americans who just can't pay their bills anymore.
So, and
the problem of corporate corruption that has stolen, our democracy.
All right, on the set now after another strong debate performance, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. How are you, Governor? Good to see you.
I'll tell you what, I've been in California. We got in Sunday night, and we were in Coronado.
Gavin's in the room.
Well, that's what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
People are buzzing about this debate that you're going to do. So I think it's going to be incredible. We're due. But tonight, look, there was a lot of bickering on the stage. And, my thing is like, look, we owe it to the American people to give our vision about how we're going to reverse this country's decline. And I think I was able to do that. I think some of the crosstalk, if I was at home watching that, I would turn the channel when I saw that. So we were able to, I think, rise above that and deliver our message.
Listen, in my view, there were a couple of people on that stage, in my view, that probably shouldn't have been there.
Right.
I mean, and I think at that point it lends itself more to a conversation. It is interesting. I think this debate is with you and the governor is going to be very interesting. So I'm looking forward to moderating that. And I think with 90 minutes, just plenty of breathing room. So that will lend itself to more conversation.
And you know what? Maybe we can say, since the former president didn't come here, maybe he'd be willing to do one with you and I. I think he owes it to our voters to come and make the case.
You're now challenging it. So this is going to be Hannity one-on-one debate
Let's
central.
do it. Let's do it, right?
I'll do anything. I'll ask them.
Here's the thing, though. You owe it to the voters to come and make the case. No one's entitled to anything. You can say, some poll months before. No. You got to make the case. You got to owe it to the voters. So I'm going to show up everywhere. I think that's what we were able to do. And, there were some important issues that were discussed tonight. There's also others that I know you and I have talked about that weren't discussed. But at the end of the day, I think the thing that was clear for this, there's a lot of talk. A lot of people had good things to say. I'm the guy that's done it. In Florida, we did everything I promised. We delivered. And we're sick of the talk with Republicans. Right. They always promise all this. Like, what are the two biggest issues, arguably, right now? The debt and the border. You and I have been talking about this for as long as we've known each other. Isn't it time we get a leader to come in and bring this stuff into a conclusion and a landing? And I think if we're able to, to do that with the nomination and win the election, we're going to be able to get all this stuff done.
Nobody brought up the point regarding the border, and I thought you had a very strong position of what you would do to close the border and no nonsense, get this thing closed. It's now become, to me, more than anything else, a national security issue.
Yes.
We are catching people that are on the terror watch list, but we're not vetting anybody. We have no idea what their background
People
is.
are coming from China, Russia, Iran, all of our enemy countries. They're coming across the border. I hope I'm wrong, but if I had to bet my life savings, I would bet that there will be a terrorist attack that happens in the future of this country that's going to be traced to that.
I mean, I pray we're wrong.
These guys in D.C., they don't care. There's no urgency. I mean, some of our guys in the House care, but like the elites in D.C., they don't care. Biden doesn't care. He's missing in action on this as the carnage mounts. And I agree. I mean, I think that this is above all a national security issue. Now, there's also nuts and bolts issues. I mean, the amount of illegals that are pouring in, medical care is being taxed, schools, it's overwhelming communities far away from the border. You see it in New York City.
In New York City, so they're paying about, on average, $40,000 $2,000 per illegal immigrant. Okay, they expect
and they're
to
kicking
spend,
out the veterans to make room for illegals.
The veterans never had the four-star hotels.
Yes.
They're building all these facilities. They expect to spend $12 billion in the next 18 months. And, you know, they're claiming this came from Governor Abbott. No, 87%
Greg has sent some, and I think it's been very good. Exactly.
It's 13%.
But here's the problem with this government we have, and I think why people are rightfully so frustrated. They can't tell us how many illegals are coming across the border. They can't tell us how many tanks we left in Afghanistan. They can't tell you where all the money in Ukraine went. They can't even tell you how cocaine got in the White House, and yet they want to go after, if you do $601 transaction.
Let's be fair to the investigators. They spent 10 long days investigating where that cocaine came from and came to the conclusion they'll never get a conclusion. How is that? But in the Menendez case, they actually found the fingerprints of the people that handed the envelopes, so they claim, to Senator Menendez. Pretty interesting comparison.
I can't believe, he had all the gold bars there. I guess that's a real testament to Bidenflation.
Listen, I love that he Googled.
People, you need to have that.
How much is a kilo of gold worth, right? You can't make this up. Generally speaking, I guess the theme of the night, as I watched and listened to you tonight, was, okay, these are the tough stances I took in Florida. That's my proven track record, and that's what I want to bring to the White House. That's your message.
I think it's leadership, and I think it's deliverables, because we can have great sloganeering, we can have great debates, but if we're not ultimately going to get this done, then none of it matters. And one of the things I've been thinking about lately, because preparing here, I looked at Reagan's farewell address. So in 2033 in January, what would I say to the American people after serving 2 terms? And that's really the vision of, you're going to be able to get ahead again in this country. We're going to have an economy that works for people. We're going to have our sovereignty restored and borders enforced. We're going to make sure that we have education, not indoctrination. We will be the world's leading superpower. We will fend off the threat from China successfully. We're not going to have crime overrunning every city in America anymore, and we're going to restore the Constitution so that we have a limited government that works beside us and on our behalf, not a weaponized government that comes after us. If we can do that, then we will have restored the shining city on the hill that Reagan talks about, and we'll be able to turn over America to our kids and grandkids better than we found it.
Governor, thanks for coming by.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Good to see you.
Yep.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.
They're failing leftist policies that have left California one of the most egregious states in the nation when it comes to for businesses, high taxes, high rates of poverty. That's why Ron DeSantis is doing this, is to offer a different vision for the country, a better forward-looking vision for the country, and it's the blueprint that has been the one he's been running in Florida.
Yeah, but Carly, this has got to be about more than just debating a blue state governor. Otherwise, DeSantis could debate Maura Healey from Massachusetts or Kathy Hochul in New York, or pick your failed Democratic governor. Does the Governor DeSantis, view Newsom as a possible opponent in 2024?
We'll see. But at the end of the day, I'll go back to the point I just made, which is California is the best example of what happens when you have leftist policies in charge. You're right. We could pick any state. But California is the best example of what happens when you have this far left, radical socialist type governance. When you see somebody like Gavin Newsom, who has been putting his thumb on the scale, trying to get government to fix every problem, it's only made everything worse. That was on full display during the lockdowns. California was locked down for years.
But Carly, does on some level, and I'm sorry to cut you off, does on some level DeSantis think he could be running, if he's the nominee, he could be running against somebody like Gavin Newsom specifically, and not Joe Biden or Kamala Harris?
That's up to Gavin Newsom. At the end of the day, look, what happened was Gavin Newsom said, I'll debate Ron DeSantis, and Ron DeSantis said, okay, bring it on. Tell me the date, tell me the time, because that's who Ron DeSantis is. He shows up. He'll debate the issues. He'll put his record and defend his record, because it's a successful one, up against anybody's in the country, whether that's at the GOP debate this week, whether it's against Gavin Newsom. Anybody who wants to debate Ron DeSantis anywhere, anytime, let's do it, because nobody can touch Governor DeSantis's record. Nobody is a stronger leader, a better leader for the people who he serves than Ron DeSantis.
All right, Hogan, just want to give you some time to respond. Yeah, look, I think Gavin Newsom basically governs a state in the way and the manner in which most Democrats wish Joe Biden could govern the country. They want all of these leftist policies enacted, the radical environmental policies that have ruined California with wildfires, the radical social policies that have hurt the schools in California, the radical poverty issues that have really destroyed cities like San Francisco. It's infested with needles and drug use, et cetera. So he is kind of the exclamation point, if you will, on the radical policies that Joe Biden wants to enact.
Yeah.
The juxtaposition could not be different. And this is a debate between red policies in red states versus blue policies in blue states. A lot of people, though, in the middle of the country think Gavin Newsom's handsome. He runs California. It's a great state. But the more you start to peel back those layers and take a look at what the policies actually do to the people, it's going to be a repudiation of that type of mentality that Joe Biden has embraced and has tried to implement at the federal level.
Yeah, Hogan, I agree with you and Carly there. I think that DeSantis, all he's got to do is fall back on his record, and he wins the debate. Newsom can't do that, even though he's got, a nice head of hair on him. But I feel like we're tiptoeing around what's really going on here. I do think, Hogan, that there is a part of the DeSantis campaign. Carly doesn't want to go there, and I get that. But I think there's part of this that is, well, maybe these two are the actual candidates in 2024. And this, if DeSantis has a good night, this could really help DeSantis' campaign. On the other side, if Newsom has a good night, people like David Ignatius and the Washington Post might say, well, maybe we really got to give Gavin Newsom a serious look here.
They're both very crafty politicians. They're both very accomplished politicians in their own right. Obviously, DeSantis' policies make Florida more successful than California, and Newsom's policies made it. But the debate here, whether they end up being top of the ticket or not, I think it's more of a comment about where the two parties are and where the two styles of governance take the American people and our futures. Obviously, Republican policy, America First policies from Donald Trump are the ones that improve the lives of all Americans, whereas the leftist policies have destroyed so many of the states. You see crime spike all over in those governed blue states. It's a problem, and I think we should debate it and expose it at every single turn and every opportunity. And so I'm anxious to see this one as well.
I think a lot of people are going to be watching this debate.
Mr. President, I've taken you too long. I appreciate the time. Merry Christmas to you. I hope you keep coming back, and I'll see you for that debate after New Hampshire if we're down to one, not counting Vivek, because Vivek's never going to quit, right? What do you make of Vivek, by the way?
He's actually, I like him. He thinks Trump was one of the greatest presidents ever, and I said, I got to like that guy. So
yeah, but he's going to be in single digits after New Hampshire. It's just got to be you and Nikki or you and Ron. Whoever is number two, let's just get a one-on-one going and have a long conversation. I appreciate it, Mr. President.
Very good. Thanks
Merry
a lot,
Christmas.
You. Take care of yourself. Thanks. You too.
I put a poll up on Twitter. At least 2/3 of the people don't want you to do the debate because they feel it could be a setup. Are you concerned about Fox setting you up?
Well, when you're at 75, 78, 80%, and other guys are at 0, 1%, 2%, 3%, you do say, what's the upside? Am I going to go up 1 point? But they could go up. They're not dumb people. They're senators, they're governors, they're intelligent people. You have some very good people.
Somehow, in the last 10 years, in the administrations of two presidents, we're now running for re-election. An entire generation of kids has lost faith in our country and lost hope for their own future. It's the only generation in American history that believes that they're going to do worse than their parents. And I'd like to see debates with Republicans and Democrats that address that issue and that tell these kids, how are we going to get you in houses? The housing prices have gone from $215,000 2 years ago to $400,000 today. The interest rates are up at 8%. And we need these kids in houses because when you're in a house, you can borrow money and you can build a business. And you can, if you have an entrepreneurial impulse, you can build on it. And, the credit card debt is now 57% of Americans are not making enough, make $5,000 less than the cost of basic human needs. Why are we talking about that?
You mentioned the fact that he said something about single mothers during the debate.
Part of the problem is we also have a federal government that pays single women more not to have a man in the house than to have a man in the house, contributing to an epidemic of fatherlessness.
What did you mean by that?
It's important that they have at least parity with married. I understand that we want to create incentives for people keeping people in marriages, but if you're penalizing people financially, single mothers for not staying in abusive marriages, it's not a good thing for anybody. I think what you said is true, that President Biden is probably not going to campaign, and that the Democrats are relying on the court cases and to try to derail the election, to try to keep President Trump off the ballot. And I think that's a very, very bad strategy. I think it's bad for democracy. I think it's bad for the Democratic Party. I think it's bad for everybody.
It sure is. I mean, he wouldn't debate you. Now it might look like he's not going to debate Trump. He's not going to campaign.
Joining us now is Blockhead Jack Dorsey. That's the title he himself requested. Jack, we really appreciate you joining us. Thank you.
Appreciate you both. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Super grateful.
Jack, you've been outspoken recently. Why do you think that RFK Jr. is the best choice for the Democratic nominee and the Democratic nominee and the best candidate in the field right now?
First and foremost, to have a candidate to be president of the United States that is focused on peace and ending all these wars, and really focusing on looking at some of the deeper issues that we've had, especially as he states around regulatory capture, the military-industrial complex. He has intimate knowledge of all these things. He's worked extremely hard and tiresome in these fields, and made a lot of progress. I came across him this year, and I really listened, and I kind of went through all of his podcasts, almost every episode, and I appreciate how much of a grasp he has of all the issues he speaks to. I appreciate that he's curious, and I appreciate that he comes at everything from more of a humanitarian angle. Mm-hmm. There's a deep, deep sense of humanity and actually helping people, and there's an edge as well. There's no fear in exploring topics that are a little bit controversial and maybe in the future. So in all, just absolutely refreshing from what I've seen from the whole field. And I'm not really usually I don't really speak out much on who I'm choosing or why, but I don't know, I just feel like our country needs his leadership.
And do you think it would be important for the Democratic Party to host primary debates so that voters have a chance to view all of these candidates and their alternatives?
Absolutely. It would be silly to not have open debates, to not have open primaries, because it feels like hiding, or everything is planned and already determined. And I don't think that builds trust. And right now we need to build as much trust as possible, open up and be as transparent as possible, and really let the people see and decide for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Could you imagine a primary, like a debate between Biden and RFK? Let RFK go. Let him go on TV. Imagine RFK telling the truth about certain issues, RFK explaining how these systems work, RFK saying things where people accuse him. People have accused you of this. What is your answer? Let him say that on national television, and people go, oh, wait a minute. What is he saying? What's going on here? And then, I like that guy better. And he's a Kennedy.
Right.
And he's a Democrat, lifelong Democrat. And he's like a reasonable, sort of centrist character. Hold on. That's our guy. That's our guy. And people would vote for him, and they didn't want it.
Of course they would. And the fact that they're not begging him to run as a Democrat is proof that they would rather lose to Trump.
Well, there's enough boomers that think he's a loon that it becomes a problem. You'd have to re-educate people. But that's where the debate would come into play. At least some reasonable people on the fence, and definitely some never-Trumpers. The never-Trumpers would go in that direction. They would go, look, this guy can win a debate against Trump. Whereas I don't think Joe Biden's even capable of having a debate at this point.
you're a lifelong Democrat, and yet so many Republicans are supporting you. And I'm sure when you gave that number about how much money you've gotten in campaign contributions, a lot of it is coming from Republicans. They're interested in you advancing to a debate with Joe Biden, which doesn't look like it's going to happen.
I mean, we're going to try to get the president to debate. We think it's really important. And it's important for I think the Democratic Party, because ultimately the president is going to have to debate a Republican, and the Republican likely, we don't know, but is going to be Trump. Trump is probably the most successful debater in this country since Lincoln Douglas. The way that he dispatched 16 Republican opponents, one after the other, during, in 2016 was really quite extraordinary. And he has his own technique that people like. And it's like going to a prize fight, and you need practice.
Sure.
And that usually happens during the primary. And asking, the president not to debate during the primary is like asking a prize fighter to practice for his big bout by sitting on a couch and eating Chick-fil-A.
It's interesting that you're saying that and praising him, because you normally don't hear that from a candidate who could potentially run against him. Are you learning? Did you learn through this campaign what your father taught you, what your uncle taught you, what Donald Trump has taught you?
Well, about what?
Just about how to run a campaign.
Well, I've got very good. I have a very good staff at running this campaign. You met Dennis Kucinich, who's my campaigan manager, and he's running 42 campaigns.
Former Fox News contributor. He's nodding his head. Yes, he's doing a good job. Right off camera there.
I mean, I have a problem with the debate for another reason. I wouldn't sign the pledge. Why would I sign a pledge? There are people on there that I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have certain people as, somebody that I'd endorse. So they want you to sign a pledge. But I can name 3 or 4 people that I wouldn't support for president. So right there's a problem, okay? Right there's a problem. But I don't have to use that.
Right now,
no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. There's no reason to insult them. But there are some people there that a lot of people wouldn't endorse, but they wouldn't be right. They're not going to go anywhere, by the way. They're not going to get it. But I wouldn't endorse it.
So the RNC said that's one of the requirements for, so you won't sign it.
Well, they have 3 or 4 people that I wouldn't, who would put these people as president? If you ever put these people as president, but you'll get somebody else. There'll be somebody. But right now, I saw Kristi Noem, who's terrific. She's done a fantastic job. I watched her this morning. She was on television. They asked her, are you going to run? Because there are other people running. Are you going to run? She said, no. Why aren't you going to run? Because nobody can beat Trump. She said it, which I greatly respect. I mean, she's saying, I hope the truth. She said, why would I run? Nobody's going to beat Trump. There's not even a contest. These people are just wasting their time. Somebody like Asa Hutchinson, who's polling at 0, will ask me nasty questions. Somebody like Chris Christie is polling at 1%, and he's going to ask me nasty questions, and others too. And then you have some that are very good. I mean, Tim Scott has been very nice, and Ramaswamy has been very, very nice. I mean, these are, very capable people, very good people. But why would you do that when you're leading by so much? Ronald Reagan didn't do it. Nixon didn't do it. Many people didn't do it. And but I'm going to look at it very seriously. I'd like to do it. I've actually gotten very good marks on debating talents, but you want to be, they want a smart president. They want somebody that's going to be smart. So we have to do the smart thing.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you that why would you do it? Christie and Pence both said you may not have the guts to come onto the debate.
Well, that's what people will say. They'll say, oh, he doesn't have the guts. He doesn't have the guts. I mean, I did CNN town hall. That was about as hostile as you can do. I did very well because, I did so well that they fired the head of CNN over that debate. But no, it's not a question of guts. It's a question of intelligence. When we started, when I announced, we were up 20, 25 points. That's a lot. Now we're up 50, 60, 70 points. And then they say, why aren't you doing the debate? I say, wait a minute. If I do the debate, what am I doing? I have a guy at 0, 1, 2, asking me nasty questions, somewhat of a hostile network asking me nasty questions, right? What am I doing? Why am I doing it? And, you want to have a smart president, not a stupid president, right? What I do look forward to is debating the Democrat, whoever that may be. And again, it's going to be interesting to see, because I don't think he makes it to the starting gate, but maybe he does. But it's going to be a very interesting period of time. And
my take on Trump, and I know him a little bit, is he gets up on the debate stage and he gets so agitated that he ends up kind of steamrolling over his own points.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, when you're going to debate Joe Biden, you are fishermen with a marlin on the line. Just let out as much line as you want. He will tire himself out and you can gaff him on board. Do not keep fighting with him. He will collapse his own arguments if you just let him answer your questions.
It's such an insightful, I think because you're a performer, you see that really quickly. I think it's a very insightful observation about Trump. The more anxious he becomes, the less articulate he is. And so if you want to have an interesting conversation with Trump, and I do, I mean, I don't interview Trump, I talk to him regularly, but I don't interview him very often. But when I do, I want to have the most interesting possible conversation. I want to hear the most about what he thinks. And why wouldn't I? I mean, that's kind of my job. And then other people can decide what they think of it. But making sure that the environment is calm, that the conversation is calm, is the key to getting Trump to reveal who he is and to speak in a fluent way that you can understand. The opposite of that, it really, I don't think anyone read it, but if you're ever interested in seeing Trump at his most anxious and the results of it, go take a look at the transcript of the interview he did in 2015 or 16 with the New York Times editorial board. And he's from New York. He cares about the New York Times. They were mean to him. They were piling on, 10 against 1. And Trump went so dada on them. He went so like verbal Jackson Pollock, just spewing paint everywhere, that it's like, it's unbelievable, the result. You couldn't understand a single thing he said. It was all stream of consciousness, hallucinatory stuff. And, I could elicit that. If you yell at Trump and call him a racist or whatever, okay, you'll get an answer you can't understand. But I don't want that. And the other point I'd make is that, distinct from like his ability as a manager, was he a good president? You could debate that. But I like Trump like as a person. Like, I think Trump is hilarious. He's one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life. I think he's really interesting to talk to. He's lived a life. He's 76. He's known every single person. What was Jackie Gleason like? He was friends with James Brown.
Right.
He'll spend 20 minutes telling you about James Brown and James Brown's various wives and his hair. And he's amazing. And I just liked Trump. And, politics aside, and I agree with a lot of his politics too, but as a person, and I just think it's weird when everyone's like, oh, he's so disgusting. It's like, if you had dinner with Trump, even if you didn't vote for him, even if you hated his views, you would enjoy it because he's a performer himself. He's a great performer. And he's a warm person, which I like.
Yeah, I was just thinking of the contrast, and I'll give you a compliment because you've been very animated and forthright and done the lion's share of the talking in this interview, which I appreciate because that's why I'm interviewing you. But when you were interviewing Trump, you asked smart questions and then sat back. You didn't make it the Tucker Carlson show, and I think that shows a high degree of skill.
Enough, man.
I know.
I've had my share of talking. I don't need any more.
Will you debate Joe Biden if he is the nominee and you are the nominee?
Oh, well, I look forward to that. How about 10 debates? How about 10?
Will you let the Presidential Debate Commission organize them, or will it be your campaign manager, Susie, with their campaign manager? Because that Presidential Debate Commission is corrupt.
They're corrupt, and remember when they turned off my microphone?
Yes.
Remember that? They kept turning off my mic.
I also remember they canceled the debate without talking to anybody.
That's right. No, they're totally corrupt. They're totally Democrat-leaning. That's being nice when I use the word leaning. They are totally corrupt, and they're terrible. With that being said, I would do 20 debates even if it was organized by them. Or do as many debates as they want. I'd do a debate every night with this guy. But
will you do a debate with any of the Republican people challenging you? If after New Hampshire there's only one Republican left, will you debate that Republican?
Yeah, I would. If it was very close, I would debate that Republican. Yeah, but
you want me as your moderator?
I'm leading. You would be a good moderator. You always are.
All right, thank you.
Fair.
Okay, I'm going to land the plane right here, Mr. President. If we're down to one candidate after New Hampshire, not counting Vivek, because Vivek's never going anywhere. So if it's just you and Nikki or you and Ron or you and Christie, You'll come back here and what? Spend 2 hours with me and those two?
I'll spend time with you. You fair? Sometimes you're fair. Most of you
come
fair.
on. I'm always
Today, I think you're fair.
Yeah.
One thing I will say, every time I get off, I say, that was a nice interview, and the next day it ends up being a front page story. But, I'll say what I say. Look, I'm very proud of the job we did. I did a great job as president, and that's why I'm leading so much in the polls. People loved it. We had the greatest economy, so many good things.
And by the way, and I said it before, but officially, for the good of our nation, it is time for Crooked Joe Biden and myself to debate. We have to debate. It's for the good of our nation. I say that for another reason, because I saw in the Washington Post today, what a terrible paper. The good news, it's losing so much money that even a rich person isn't that stupid that they're going to keep it going. But the Washington Post, some real lightweight journalist, quote, journalist, said, Biden wants to debate Trump, but Trump is not available. He doesn't want to do it. Can you believe this? So officially to you, Washington Post, and you know the reporter I'm talking about, they make it up. They say, Biden wants to debate me. Oh, he wants to do it, but I don't want to do it. No, just the opposite, as he knows. These are very dishonest people. They're so bad for our country. I want to debate Biden because I think it's important for the American people to hear what's going on and how can you destroy our country like you're doing it. So officially, I want to debate Crooked Joe Biden. Anytime, anywhere, any place, I'll debate.
Both candidates will clinch their party's nomination in the three primaries that are being held today and will be entering the general election. And I would hope that both of these candidates will debate. We should start talking about the issues that concern Americans, the chronic disease epidemic, the destruction of our soils, the forever wars.
But you have to get in on that debate. You have to get in on that debate.
The question is whether or not he's going to get to the starting gate. I can only hope. I challenged him to a debate, and he said his person, who's really a wonderful spokesperson, his press secretary, how good is she? She actually didn't know what to say. But I do, and I challenge him right now. He's at another part of your state where he's really said some bad things today, and we'll get into that. He said some really bad things.
We're going to start with Joe from Brookings, Oregon.
Joe, what's your question? Keep it tight.
Yes, would Mr. Kennedy be willing to do a one-on-one debate with Donald Trump, since we know Joe Biden's too senile to do it himself?
I would love nothing more than that. It would be great to have a three-person debate, but I will debate either President Biden or President Trump in any kind of forum that they want.
Good luck with that. I don't even think they're going to debate each other, to be honest.
You can see we have an empty podium right here to my right. You know what that is? That's for Joe Biden. I'm trying to get him to debate. I'm calling on Crooked Joe to debate anytime, any place. We'll do it anywhere you want, Joe, so that we can discuss in a friendly manner the real problems of our country, of which there are many, instead of trying to have corrupt prosecutors fight your battles for you. That's no good. We got all these corrupt prosecutors, deranged Jack Smith, all of them. These are deranged people. Let's debate outside, Joe. Let's go have a good, solid, friendly debate, just a friendly, where our country's going, because our country's going to hell, and we're not going to let it happen. The most important day in the history of our country will be November 5th of this year.
What did you make of this headline from MSNBC? Trump's preoccupation with, they said this, Donald Trump is desperate to participate in presidential debates. Joe Biden would be justified in turning him down.
I laughed very hard when I saw this. So now presidential debates, which most of the American people want to see, are a preoccupation or desperation on the part of Trump. No, he wants a debate because that's what people get, a debate. He knows he'll win a debate. And our Fox polling shows 64% of voters said it's extremely or very important to see a debate, and 72% said it's a sign of weakness if someone doesn't debate. So it's a preoccupation, desperation. This is the liberal media trying to give Joe an out. I don't think voters will give it to him.
Exit question, will they debate?
I don't think so. Okay. I hope so.
You're calling for a debate with President Trump. You have an open letter to him. I'll let you explain it.
Yeah, we're both, Eric, thanks for having me, first of all. We're both speaking at the Libertarian Convention in Washington, D.C. on May 24th and 25th. I've invited President Trump to debate. He's repeatedly said that he is willing to debate anytime, any place. He said that he specifically would debate me as long as my poll numbers are up. My numbers now in the latest Quinnipiac poll and CNN poll exceed the 15% threshold. We also have just done the biggest poll of the campaign. Typical polls, Eric, are around 22,000 people, 1,200 to 2,000 people. Our poll was 26,000 people. It costs almost $200,000. The value of this poll, other people would charge $500,000 for it. It is so large that it has virtually a zero margin of error. And that poll shows, we did head-to-head races, and that poll shows that in a head-to-head race, I beat President Trump narrowly, and that I beat President Biden in a landslide. That the poll also shows that whether I'm in the race or I'm out of the race, President Biden cannot win the race. And in fact, President Trump wins 2 extra states if Maryland or Virginia and Maine, if I drop out of the race. But the poll shows me that the first time in history in head-to-head races, a third-party candidate beating the candidates of both political parties. And that's unprecedented.
Here you are, and you put this open letter out. Have you heard back from the Trump campaign?
We have not heard from him yet, but we hope to hear from him, and I hope to see him at the Libertarian Convention. The other news that we have is we got on the ballot in the state of Delaware. So we now have sufficient signatures for 11 states. We're getting 2 or 3 states a week, and we'll continue doing that until we have all 50. We will be on all 50 by July. And something that, again, has never been done with this many, a million signatures. We're going to get almost 2 million. We're going to get about double what we need to give us a big cushion, because the DNC and the RNC are both trying to throw us off the ballot because they don't want to have this contest. And then, the last piece of news is that we put out 2 days ago, we put the Super PAC, Kennedy, the American Values Super PAC, put out a 30-minute video called Who is Bobby Kennedy? It's narrated by Woody Harrelson. It's a very, very powerful video, and it already has 100 million views. Both Facebook and Instagram have been actively censoring the video. They've been removing it from people's platforms, and now they continue. Now we've called their attention and threatened litigation. They've allowed people to actually post it, but they are shadow banning it and slow walking it. So we're looking at our litigation options right now, but over 100 million people have now seen that video.
So I want to get to that in a second. It's a great video, by the way. I've watched it in full. Back to the debate, and we'll get the other. You sure you want to debate Donald Trump? I mean, there are stages littered with political careers everywhere in the aftermath of people wanting to debate Donald Trump. The guy's a master debater without a question. You up for that? You ready for that?
I am, and I agree with you. I think President Trump is arguably, well, he's certainly the best debater in modern political history. I would say since my uncle. My uncle was also a very good debater, and who knows, what would have happened if my uncle had come across Donald Trump. I can't imagine it, but you could argue that he's the best debater since the Lincoln-Douglas debate. He's gone through, as you know, in 2016, he went through 16 opponents and, left them all in mayhem.
But I think it's the polls, and they just view you as a wild card. And between them, they can't decide from whom you pull more. And therefore, it's easiest not to have you on that stage. Let me ask you this. Right now, you're not consistently at 15%, although you seem to be getting there, and you're not on enough ballots to get to 270 electoral votes. On that basis, is it a legitimate means of keeping you off the stage?
First of all, on all the legitimate polls, including the polls that CNN says that it's going to rely on, we do hit 15%. The polls that don't have us at 15% are asking the questions in a deceptive way that suppresses by the perceived support that we have. But the Monmouth poll, the Quinnipiac poll, CNN's own poll has me at 15% this last month. The New York Times, CNN poll, the Harvard-Harris poll, we have 6 major polls that show me at or above 15%. The other thing is I'm going to be on the ballot in 340, in enough states to get 340 electoral votes. That's one of the criteria. Neither President Trump or President Biden is going to be on the ballot in any states at that time. So I think CNN made a tactical error because they basically made a criteria that President Trump and President Biden can't meet. The parties are on, and they're the presumptive nominees, but they don't have the nomination yet, so they're not going to be able to get on the ballot.
In other words, you're saying as a technical matter, the parties will be given ballot access, but they've not yet formally secured their party's nomination because there hasn't been a convention.
Yeah, I'm the only one of these 3 candidates that will qualify for that criteria. So CNN, has made criteria that I'm the only one that can qualify for it.
Is there any recourse that you're going to pursue?
Well, we have a legal recourse if CNN denies us. The CNN, there's plenty of court cases that say once you make an open challenge, like CNN did, and you post criteria, you've now got a contract with people who can meet that criteria. And so, we do have a contractual. There are, Michael, we have a fairness doctrine in this country that governs the television networks that says that you have to give equal time. But there's no private cause of action for us to enforce the fairness doctrine.
Bobby, I think that went out in the Reagan years. I mean, I came of age as a broadcaster as that was waning. I don't think that applies. But by the way, I understand you're upset with CNN because CNN's hosting the first one, but it really seems like the fix was in between Trump and Biden, and some network, if not this one, some network was going to quickly snap it up.
Yeah, I think that President Biden particularly does not want to see me on stage. President Trump says that he is happy to have me there if I meet the criteria. So by the way, the fairness doctrine, the aspects of it that require equal time are still in place. Most of the fairness doctrine, you're right, was abandoned during the Reagan years. But those aspects are still legal requirements. They do have to give equal time, although there's no private right of action.
Thank you so much for coming back and being heard on this issue. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. Good to see you this morning, Michael.
You too, Bobby. Thank you.
I think President Trump is arguably, well, he's certainly the best debater in modern political history. I would say since my uncle. My uncle was also a very good debater, and who knows, what would have happened if my uncle had come across Donald Trump. I can't imagine it, but you could argue that he's the best debater since the Lincoln-Douglas debate. He's gone through, as you know, In 2016, he went through 16 opponents and, left them all in mayhem. I would like to debate President Biden and President Trump in any forum. CNN has offered them a forum, and under the FEC rules, CNN has to announce objective criteria, and then they have to comply with that criteria. Well, they announced objective criteria, and those criteria were that in order to get on this stage, you needed to be at least 15% in 4 national polls from companies that they designated from a limited number of polling organizations. Well, as it turns out, we submitted them 5 polls from those companies, plus a 6th poll came out today, as you just noted.
You got to be at 15%, and then you have to have the Electoral College viability, right?
And you have to have viability for 270 electoral votes. Well, we will have enough signatures by June 20th, which is the cutoff date. We will have enough signatures for 343 electoral votes. So we will qualify to that extent. We already are on the ballot in certain states.
5, right?
I think it's 7, but you could be right. It may be 5. And we have enough ballots for another 8. We have enough ballots. I think we have enough signatures to get on the ballot in the 16. We've been holding them back.
So let's say CNN doesn't let you in.
But let me just finish that thought, Chance. I'm the only one who's going to be on the ballot in any state on June 20th, because I think they made an error because they used criteria that was taken from the Presidential Commission on Debates, and they usually don't debate until September. So by then there's a nominee in both political parties, and they have, they meet that criteria. But right now, President Trump and President Biden are not nominees. They're presumptive nominees, but they are on the ballot in no states. So I'm the only one. If you want to find somebody who's the most qualified, I'm the most qualified.
Will you sue if they still say no?
Today we filed a complaint with the FEC. And, we believe that if the FEC enforces the law, that they're going to find that there was, there's also evidence, strong evidence that's been reported in the mainstream media of collusion between the Trump campaign, the Biden campaign, particularly the Biden campaign, and CNN.
Debate's coming up on June 27th.
Yeah.
How do you prepare for that? And you've stated it. Joe Biden's in a different place. What's your strategy coming into it?
So debates are interesting because I had never debated before, and then I debated a lot on the first, in 2016, I had like 14 debates or something. And it's been good. It's been good for me. It's been worked. I think I won every debate. But I never had, it was very interesting. In 2016, I said, who are these people I'm debating? Half of them I never heard of because, they're governors from someplace or they're senators. I said, start with Ted Cruz. And they say, well, he's the national debate champion. He's the this, he's the that. And I said, that's not good news. That's not good. I could have done with a little bit less. Maybe I should have started with somebody else. But they were all, they're talented politicians. That's what, for the most part, they're politicians. Very interesting. In running for president, 92% were politicians and 8% were generals. Not admirals or anything, generals. And that's it. So when, all of a sudden I'm going in as a business guy and different kind of a guy. But we had great 4 years. We were very successful,
I know you filed this complaint with the Federal Elections Commission. What do you think is behind this decision? Do you think it's driven by the Biden camp, the Trump camp, both camps, CNN? What?
The rules are that the networks can sponsor debates, but they cannot pre-select. They have to use pre-selected criteria in order to decide who gets to participate in those debates, and it has to be objective, neutral criteria. And what happened, according to the people who participated in that conversation, as reported by the Washington Post, is that the Biden administration said to CNN, you need to select rules that will keep Robert Kennedy off the stage, or we're not going to participate. If you have criteria that you design to garner 2 candidates, then that's an illegal, and to exclude everybody else, And that is an illegal campaign contribution to those candidates. And so we've written a complaint to FEC asking them to enforce the rules. We talked with CNN, and CNN was very cagey about exactly what happened in that conversation. We asked them, did you pre-select? Did you select it in response? Did you select your criteria in response to what the Biden administration asked you to do? And they said, we can't answer that question because it's privilege. Well, there is no privilege that applies to that conversation. So they were being dishonest about that.
Do you think that there's one candidate that's more against you being there, obviously because they think you're going to hurt their chances more?
Both candidates wanted me off the stage, but since the announcement, President Trump has come out publicly and said that he would welcome me on the stage, as long as I meet the criteria, which I do. The President Biden's staff has said they do not want me on the stage and that they will not participate if I am on the stage. So I would say the answer to that question is that President Biden doesn't want me on. The polls, the best polls, show that I take many more votes away from President Trump than I do from President Biden. So, when we poll our own followers, about 57% of them say that if I'm not in the race, that they're going to support President Trump. If I'm in the race with President Trump and President Biden, President Trump wins. If I get out of the race, President Trump wins larger. He actually gets 2 more states, Virginia and Maine. If in a head-to-head race between me and President Trump, I beat President Trump. President Biden cannot beat President Trump. I can. In a head-to-head race between me and President Biden, I win 39 states. He only wins 11.